Hi, I'm Lisa Anderson, host of Supply Chain Chats and president of LMA Consulting Group. And I'm thrilled to be here today with Daniel Hersh of Hersh Family Investments. Daniel, you tell us a little bit about what Hersh Family Investments does.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you for having me. Exciting topics and very relevant in today's world. HFI, Hersh Family Investments, HFI, we're based in Dallas. We're an investment office for our family. We do a variety of things: private equity, venture capital, and real estate. And real estate's probably the biggest individual bucket, but we invest in industrial warehouses on the border, primarily in the Laredo region, but also, active in El Paso, Eagle Pass, McAllen, down in the valley. We also do a bunch here in DFW, on the residential side and mixed use side. On the private equity front, we invest in business services companies that are in many cases related to supply, the global supply chains. Also tech companies and venture capital and kind of that in that neck of the woods as well. So we do a variety of things. My focus primarily is on the real estate side, and I spend a lot of my time on our projects down in the border region in Texas.
Well, very good, because there's a lot going on these days when it comes to the supply chain and certainly the Mexico-U.S. Relationship and what's trending. So I'm excited to be talking to you today. So maybe tell us a little bit about what you see happening currently with the U.S.-Mexico trade relationship. I mean, certainly we know that the U.S. has gone into several different agreements or potential agreements with countries, and with Mexico, we've seemingly had a good relationship thus far. But tell us from your perspective, because you're there, in the
Yeah.
midst of it on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think the way you described it is pretty accurate. I would say of all the countries in the world where, there's been a push and pull politically, I would say Trump and Scheinbaum do seem to personally have a better relationship than most. There are obviously a lot of factors at play within the Mexico-US relationship, and historically, a lot of it's been kept separate. So, the drug and cartel side of things was held separately from the NAFTA and the USMCA 1.0 side of things, and now what we're seeing is it's all being kind of lumped together, and you're saying you can't play ball with me here if you're not going to play ball with me there. So it's created a really interesting dynamic. I think overall, what from the folks that I've talked to and on both the, you know, manufacturing side in northern Mexico and the distribution side in the US, people are really taking a wait and see kind of approach. We have a lot of important deadlines coming up. The USMCA 1.0 was signed in 2020 with a 6-year initial term. So it's due for I think I forget the exact technical term in the agreement, but it's not supposed to be a renegotiation every 6 years. It's supposed to be a review. And, the way things have gone, it's certainly being positioned politically as a renegotiation. So that is supposed to happen, starting now, and going. It is, in theory, at least, it is supposed to be wrapped up by June of 2026. The U.S. has started its kind of public, getting public opinion phase of the review process, as has Mexico. I think Canada has done the same, although I'm a little bit less plugged in on the Canadian front. And so I think what people are doing, what I'm seeing people do, especially and having it trickle down to where I spend time on the real estate side of things, is these 3PLs and distribution companies have been basically trying to delay any major decisions until they know what the rules of the road are, which, back in April, we would have certainly thought we would know what the rules of the road are by September. Now that we're in
True.
September, I would think that we should know what the rules of the road are 6 months from now, but ultimately I don't know. And I do think there's a risk that there is no certainty basically until, June at the earliest, and then who knows, what other things might come up in between now and then. Um, so I think I've seen people trying to delay major decisions. So what that means in practice in my world is like leasing expansion and leasing decisions have been delayed significantly. Um, Companies that have a need for more space to for their distribution or manufacturing processes are basically just squeezing all of their operations into their existing space for as long as they can until they know what the rules of the road are. And I mean, I totally, it's a I completely sympathize with them. It's a very hard environment to be making significant decisions that are, they're not thinking about 6 to 9 month timeframes. They're thinking about 5 to 10 to 15 year timeframes. And so, you know, just logically speaking, when, I think about it, it's like, okay, well, I can delay a decision for 4 months and have a lot more certainty about whether that's the right decision or the wrong decision, and that'll impact my next 15 years. Like, obviously, I'm going to wait those 3 or 4 months until I know a little bit more. So that's
True.
that's what I'm seeing. I think there is a stark contrast. Sorry, this answer is getting a little long-winded, but
No, no, that's okay.
feel free to
We're
edit me down if
interested.
you want. Um, I think there is a stark contrast between the mood between people in Mexico and both on the political side and the manufacturing side and on the business side there versus the people in doing those same functions in Canada. I think
Yeah.
our administration's been much more antagonistic towards Canada than it has been with Mexico, and I mean, one of the reasons for that is I think Canada is not, they're not playing ball as much. Mexico, on the other hand, they're doing what they can. They're putting troops up near the border. They're doing what they can to, reduce the cartel activity. There's always a question of are they doing enough, or is what they're doing effective, or is it something else? But they're at least doing something, and I think this recent notion that I think it was a week or two ago of them, putting tariffs on Chinese goods as well for stuff that Asian manufacturers are trying to transship through Mexico to avoid tax tariffs.
Interesting.
That's something that was in the news. So I do think we essentially, I don't think it's this clean cut, but in it illustratively, we have essentially given Mexico a laundry list of things saying you need to do X, Y, Z, all these things, and then we'll be able to keep this USMCA agreement at least somewhat intact. And I do think that they are going through that and trying, at least giving a very honest effort in trying to, satisfy those conditions. So it's a long way of saying I think the relationship in Mexico is better than it is with Canada, but I think the uncertainty that everyone was talking about in April and May, I don't think has gone away, which is makes it tough to make major decisions.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's a little bit more prevalent related to the U.S.-Mexico trade because of the USMCA potential for being renegotiated, it sounds like. Uh, Also, I think you and I talked about this previously, but I've been seeing that the tax and the tariffs are, well, I guess in this case, the tariffs are still slightly iffy. However, I believe that that it's going to work out fine for US and Mexico. But I know that there's still the interest rate's still higher. So it'll be interesting to see if things start improving here over the fall as we start to get lower interest rates. I'm hoping so.
Yeah, well, we'll find out this afternoon, I guess, if
Yeah, that's right. Perhaps
is
it'll be hot off the press. So now, and I agree with you. I see that U.S. and Mexico seem to have a solid relationship. I don't think that's going anywhere. I think that the two are, uh, it's a good collaboration, and we're also, I don't know, interdependent, if you will, on each other. And so I am seeing the same in manufacturing companies in the U.S., regardless of where they, where they may get some supplies from. But the volumes are, have been pushed out and delayed just because they're uncertain. And I've been saying, because of those three factors. So we'll see. And then now we have a new one with Mexico, from what you're saying.
Yeah.
So are you seeing, I think we mentioned or we talked previously about, since Mexico has the additional issue of the whole drugs and cartels and, what are the businesses in Mexico, or what's your impression of what they're thinking about this crackdown on the border, since that also would relate to this, to this topic?
Well, it's hard for me to say because I haven't talked to, Mexican companies a whole lot directly about what they think about the cartel issues. A few folks that I have talked to, so I would say not as scientific statistically
Right.
sample
Not an
size,
official
but
study, but
a few anecdotes that of folks that I've talked to in Mexico are, they're not too unhappy with the U.S. being a little strong-armed on forcing Mexico to deal with the cartel issue. A lot of folks who are business owners and honest, hardworking people and really, really good people and friends of mine, they do things the right way, and it is undermining to everybody, every honest person's business, to have this black market cartel operating in the shadows. And in a lot of cases in Mexico, it's not even really in the shadows. They're
right.
front and center in a lot of cases, and so I think a few anecdotes that I've heard is some business owners and educated people in Mexico are not unhappy about us,
Right.
being a little bit tougher on getting them to do something about their cartel issue.
Well, it probably provides a bit more stability. And didn't you say your company is expanding or continuing to expand along the Mexico border? Is that correct?
We are making investments. We have a couple investments in Laredo, and we're always looking at more deals. It's mostly on the real estate side, but also on the private equity side to get involved with companies and users on the border. Ultimately, it's driven by the short term. There's some noise and this uncertainty that we're talking about.
Yep.
In the medium and the long term, I really think that the writing is on the wall. We are as a country and as a society are getting political pressure and pure economic pressure that was highlighted during COVID with the elongated supply chains becoming a big issue, to move stuff out of Asia and somewhere else. And so there's a lot of political rhetoric about bringing all that manufacturing back to the U.S., bringing the jobs back to the U.S., which to some degree is awesome. Like, I think, if we have really high value chip manufacturing in the U.S., that's, and that, I think that's great. I think that's a lot easier said than done.
Right.
There's a lot of education and workforce development that needs to happen that, I mean, better than I do, that I don't think we are particularly well equipped right now to do. But, even theoretically, if we did have the labor for the high value stuff to do in-house in the U.S., there's I don't know what the order of magnitude more low and medium value manufacturing that needs to be done, that it's physically impossible to do it all in the U.S. And so we have this amazing, super globally unique setup of Mexico, the U.S., and Canada together in one block in this North America region, where Mexico has a great low cost labor force whose cost is, again, it better than I do, but the cost is competitive with the lower cost countries in Asia, to my understanding. And
it's absolutely true.
And they're our neighbor, and they can operate under our general allyship and sphere of influence and everything.
Yeah.
And Canada, there's all sorts of other red tape and things with Canada, but they have a huge amount of natural resources that are at their disposal.
Right.
I know that there's other things to consider that, make those not necessarily fully attainable, at least in the short term. But we have like an amazing set of three countries right here that is like the best positioned block in the world, from a consumer and economic engine standpoint in the U.S., from a labor force perspective in Mexico, and from a natural resources perspective in Canada. We just need to work on actually working together, in my opinion, working together
Right.
to unleash that block, and we can be globally competitive and globally leading in like so many different categories.
No, I completely agree. I think so. What I'm hearing you say is as we're moving towards more of a regional supply chain, which from a manufacturing and distribution point of view is going to be focused more so on Mexico and the US. Really, with Mexico, Mexico has the ability to produce to scale, and they have the capabilities to produce significantly. So, and the US has the largest consumer needs. And
Right.
to your point, Canada has the natural resources. That'd be key too. From a U.S.-Mexico relationship, though, it sounds like you're in essence investing in the longer-term regional supply chain, is what
Yes.
I'm hearing you say.
Yes, that's right. I mean, I think I mean, I'm confident I'll be proven wrong in some regard, but our
Who's not?
opinion is that the economics are going to outweigh whatever the short-term political fluctuations are, and the economics are pushing companies to shorten supply chains generally, and reduce dependence on China. And I guess that's economics and politics. Um, and I don't. I think the medium and long term picture is going to be a ton of manufacturing happening in Mexico, and us being the end customer. And
Yep.
I think some manufacturing will come back to the U.S., and that's great, and especially in some
Yeah.
select
Agreed.
industries. Um, but do we need to are we going to realistically be making Legos
No,
in the
yeah. I
US?
mean,
Like,
there's going to be plenty for Mexico. Well, the U.S. could double its output, and it still wouldn't be, nearly enough. And I think Mexico's going to have huge opportunities. So I personally agree. I think it's going to be a wise investment. And I think it takes us to another topic. So you have some expertise on the manufacturing capabilities in Monterey and Texas. You want to tell us a little bit about, what your thoughts are on that?
yeah, well, so I guess I mean, in northern Mexico, like Monterrey is it's the center of the region, and it is the industrial hub of the country. There's a whole kind of heritage of maquiladoras up in northern Mexico, and that's basically coalesced into creating this a highly skilled, highly competent workforce that's available in and around Monterey and Saltillo. And it's you know from a workforce perspective, it's an amazing it's great. The challenge there is utilities and infrastructure and water. I
Hmm.
think water probably being and power. Water and
Water and power are a big deal.
they're always the big issues. And it doesn't help that we get in some slap fights politically with Mexico over water usage on the Rio Grande and the Colorado
Yeah.
rivers. So that doesn't that's not helpful. But I'm seeing and again, I'm seeing it a little bit more through like the real estate lens. So I'm seeing more like how much manufacturing space is being taken in Monterey
Right.
versus
So
elsewhere.
sometimes that's the best, indicator.
Yeah. And so I've seen in 2022, 23, 2022 and 23, it was like hockey stick type absorption. And 2024, people were, it was still going up at a pretty good clip, but it was, you know, people were like, okay, let's see what there was the Mexican election and the US election. So, for basically the whole year, people were like, okay, let's just wait until we see
Yeah.
what the election results are. Um, and then in 2025, it's really, I think it's plateaued, and
Hmm.
supply. I mean, Monterey, the Monterey industrial real estate scene was always, I mean, it's grown massively over the last 10 years and it's always been absorbed. And so, you know,
Yeah.
vacancy rates like 1 or 2%, like in that ballpark. And today I think, it's increased a bit. I think it's like 5 or 6% vacancy. So it's
Okay.
by normal industrial market standards, that's like not very much vacancy. Like that's a pretty healthy
Mm-mm.
market. Um, but compared to what it was, 5, 6
Right.
years ago, it is an increase. So I would say things are still happening. What has stopped from the anecdotes that I've heard is there had been a good amount of Chinese companies moving in there and
Yes.
campuses, and to what I've heard, that faucet has been turned off.
Yeah. I heard the
They're
same.
yeah, they're pretty aware that we're going to be in this USMCA revision. I think the U.S. is going to be like super keyed in on making sure that a Chinese company that happens to operate in Mexico is still
Right.
not tariff exempt.
I mean,
Um,
in essence, what I think you're saying, just to make sure for our listeners, but
yeah,
China is no longer going to be allowed and isn't allowed. Well, it really isn't something that was supposed to happen all along, but it was happening. And that is that China was, in essence, um, setting up operations in Mexico so that they could bring they could produce uh, in China, in essence, send it through Mexico and bring it into the U.S. without paying a tariff is really what's been
yeah,
going on.
yeah.
That's what you're saying, right?
That's essentially what I'm saying. And look, the Chinese investment in Mexico is very real over the last 5 years or 5 or 10.
Yes.
The I think the percentages that you see in some headlines are a little misleading because it'll say like China's investment in Mexico has increased like 5,000% over the last like year or two. And it's like that is true, but you're going off such a small base. Like the actual
Right.
numbers are not that crazy. I mean, the U.S. invests far more in Mexico on any given year than China does. But that being said, it is still they are becoming very real numbers. And I get one anecdote is I was at a conference in Mexico City in March, I think it was this year. And it was a logistics world logistics summit, I think was the name of it. And I mean, all these 3PL, it was mostly 3PLs that had booths and set up sessions and stuff and some logistics companies. And there were a lot of Chinese companies like that were
Hmm.
represented. I mean, like noticeably more Chinese. I mean, there are a lot of U.S. companies that had, their Mexican
Right.
representatives there.
Right. But that is
Yeah, but there were a lot of
noteworthy.
Chinese companies that had Chinese representatives there. So it was interesting. Um, anyway, what I have also seen, so there's China and then there's like other Asian countries and
Right.
companies from other Asian countries. And I think in 2025, other Asian countries similarly were, and again, you probably have clients and know probably better color than I do. But from what I saw, those Asian countries or companies from those Asian countries were very hesitant to do anything in Mexico because they weren't sure what the rules would be. And I am
Right.
hearing now that it does feel like they're feeling a little bit more secure in like a South Korean company is not going to be treated the exact same way as a Chinese company. Um,
Right. Yeah. No, I think that, or at least from my understanding, the tariff deals that have been worked out, if you have I forgot what they call it, like a framework, that's what it is, a framework of a deal, like South Korea, Japan, there's other,
yeah,
there's other Asian countries, Vietnam, exactly. They have the same thing in essence in their agreement as Mexico does, and that is it's not allowed to bring products, it's not allowed to skirt the law basically and
yeah.
the tariff situation with China. So I think that you're absolutely right that roadblock has been removed. And so it's bound to make sense for them to do some, manufacturing in Mexico for other purposes. And so I don't think that they'll be held back anymore by that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I I think that's the case, and I hope it continues to be the case. Because personally, I mean, I mean, we have a great relationship with South Korea and their companies and Japan, and
Yep.
I
Thailand.
personally want the U.S. to lead with a cadre of friends through, be set the global example. I don't know if our politicians totally agree with that approach, but anyway,
True.
that aside.
Well, and I do think, I mean, I think that the China deal is getting closer as well. However, I think it's always going to be more precarious because they're not necessarily known to be living up to their end of any bargain. So, but I do believe that that Mexico will be, in good shape, like you said, medium to longer term for sure, from what I can see. So it sounds like you're saying the same. And
Yep.
it's interesting that you brought up Monterey because I visited there once, quite a while ago, and it was really impressive. It is really the manufacturing powerhouse, if you will, of Mexico. It seems like, a large manufacturing city in the US or something.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that's part of the scale, though. So we don't want, I think that, we want to encourage the regional nature of the supply chain, focusing in the US on the critical industries, of course, that we have to be able to support our defense and health and those types of things. But we're going to need, to collaborate and supplement in our extended supply chain. So I think that's great that you're continuing to see that and invest in that area because I think
Yeah.
it'll be successful. And I guess I don't know if there's anything else on industrial development. If so, feel free to bring it up. But I also wanted to ask you about your thoughts on the 3PL side of things.
Yeah, I think so. The 3PLs, I mean, again, from what I'm seeing and hearing, their clients are these manufacturers, and
Yeah.
the manufacturers aren't making a ton of decisions and expansions and trying new things, then the 3PLs aren't going to either. And so, like in Laredo, particularly, which is such a big, crucial distribution hub for the 3PLs, I'm seeing the exact same thing. Like decisions are going to be
Okay.
kicked down the road. I've been talking to several groups, kind of on our leasing side, and they want to start. They talk to us about needing a warehouse for a new client that they're onboarding, or they're trying to win the business of, and the assignment starts in 2 months, so we need a warehouse. And then a week later it's like, oh, they come back to us and say, hey, our client now wants the assignment to start at the first of the year. And so
Yeah.
it's just the same thing. Cans are getting kicked down the road on major decisions still. And so
Yeah.
not to sound like too much like a broken record, but it's essentially the same story
Okay.
that I'm hearing on the manufacturing front.
Well, that's what I'm hearing too. So it makes sense that that's the case. Now, are you seeing? I imagine that the Mexico-U.S. border focus for 3PLs is going to be, of course, having the space, the ability to scale rapidly. But are they also concerned about, advanced technologies, robotics? Because I know that in the industrial area of Southern California, which has been popular because of the ports, that's really a key focus. But I don't know if that's true related to the Mexico corridor.
Yeah, so I think I think you're referring to like the port workers and people being worried about, robots taking their jobs on the ports and or
Well, I'm thinking more like for the warehouses themselves
uh,
and maybe and the 3PLs in this area that really they're saying we don't really want the space unless it's we're going to be putting advanced technologies,
right.
automation systems and that type of thing in there. So, but I don't know if that is as much of a focus on the Mexico side of things because, may not be.
Yeah, I think it is. There's definitely, I mean, technology adoption it drives efficiencies, and what happens on the border is all about efficiency because, an inefficient customs and border crossing process
True.
costs a lot of time and a lot of money to all parties involved. I guess the customs broker, I guess, gets paid for it, but it just so the efficiency game, the efficiency is the name of their game. And I've seen a variety of startups, AI for customs brokerage and,
Oh yeah.
all sorts of different, automated tools on the software side to help make their processes a little bit better and more efficient. Inventory management, yard management, labor management, et cetera.
Yeah.
Whether that's adopted or not, I don't know. You would think logically that it should be the good ideas will be adopted by, the innovative, smart people. But I can tell you, I mean, in Laredo, I think there's hundreds, if not thousands, of customs brokers in Laredo, and I think a lot of them are old school. A lot of them still do things
Yeah.
manually, and I think those are the ones in this short term kind of uncertain, slightly lower volume environment. I think those are the ones who are going to get hurt. And it's
Yeah.
the ones who can really manage their business efficiently with uh, less, just a lower cost structure those are the ones that are gonna ultimately probably benefit. In terms of like facility management and using robots in, like, for racking and for tracking
Yeah.
your warehouse, definitely seeing some of that. I think the reality is always slower to it, like
That is true.
adoption is always slower than the headlines make it sound. And it varies. I mean, I've been in a few cold storage facilities down on the border, and they still have, people looking at the avocados, making sure that, the avocados look good. And I've also been in other warehouses that have, almost a fully automated, you know, racking and inventory system. And so it spans the gamut. But I think it's obviously trending towards automation. The other thing that I think is really interesting, and I'm not sure what the timeline is, or again, I don't know what the technology timeline is, and then I don't know what the adoption timeline is. But there's a few companies that are testing autonomous trucks here in
Yeah.
Dallas, actually, and the truck driver part of the equation is, you know, it's a big that's a big part of the equation, both from like the time restrictions that they have on driving and just, human endurance
Yeah.
abilities, and also truck drivers are very expensive. Uh, you know, how and when this autonomous trucking becomes an option, I'm not entirely sure, but I do think it's coming at some point. So
Yeah. That's
I
very true.
I think a lot of it. I think the robotics and everything again. I spend a lot of time on the border. It's a long way from San Francisco and like where the center of innovation.
Yeah.
And so it just takes a little bit longer for companies to adopt the technology, but it's definitely in process of being, automated, and the customs process is being made more efficient,
Well, that's good.
every year.
Customs is always complex and very manual, so that does
Yeah.
seem like a good thing to address. Well, very good. Is there any last thoughts on your side? And I have one on mine. So
Yeah. Oh, I think I mean I think, just to sum it up, I think the short term right now for Mexico and for manufacturers in Mexico and the US, frankly, is still uncertain and is noisy. But I think the medium and long term are looking great. And I think, you know, Mexico and Canada, also Canada, these are our close friends. These are our neighbors. I think, politics aside, like, it makes way, 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 way more sense to work together as a block of three, close friends and allies, than to work independently of each other. And
for
I
sure.
hope I hope that's the way that the world goes. I don't know. And then the last thing, I'll just do a little shameless plug advertisement. But if any of your listeners are distribution or manufacturing companies that, are looking for a facility on the border somewhere, on the Texas side of the border, I'd love to chat, love to reach out. You can reach out to Lisa and she can pass my information along. But we're happy to, build and help facilitate an expansion for your business. So a little shameless plug. And
That's
I'll
okay, because
toss it
I
back
was
to
going to
you.
say, my thoughts are that you need to be thinking medium term, because medium term could be in the matter of, less than a handful of months, can be considered medium term at this point.
Yeah.
And what I see happening is that when volume hits, it can hit really quickly, especially in this arena. And so
Yeah.
I think that you need to be ready to scale quickly, and you have to have your partners already in place. So I was going to say, you're a definitely forward-looking company has the ability to scale. So I think, so I completely agree with that, and I also think it's a good philosophy overall. Is that you should be looking at strategic partners, your ability to scale. Also, you could consider it a collaborative sort of vertical integration. And I think that that'll somewhat be the case between Mexico and the US. And even Canada, that could take longer term. But, we can from manufacturing through distribution and the end-to-end supply chain, if we can vertically integrate with extremely trusted partners, or you may even take stakes in each other's companies, then I
Yeah.
think that's going to be trending in the future as well. Well, very
Absolutely.
good. Well, thank
Well,
you, Daniel. It's been great to have you on Supply Chain Chats, and we look forward to talking to you again next time. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks, Lisa. This is a lot of fun and great topics and thoughtful questions. So thank you very much for having me.